Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something a little mind-bending. We're going to explore how some of our most modern anxieties, and honestly, our most breathtaking technological leaps, are actually mirrored, almost perfectly, in ancient Indian texts and archaeological sites. Seriously, it's wild. I'll be your guide as we trace these absolutely fascinating parallels between humanity's deepest past and our rapidly accelerating future. Let's get right into it. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. You've probably heard this chilling quote. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, uttered these exact words as he watched the terrifying fireball of the Trinity atomic test back in July 1945. In that one blinding flash, humanity was violently thrust into a completely new era. But what's really fascinating is that with this single sentence, Oppenheimer essentially slammed the modern atomic age right into ancient mythology. He was directly quoting the profound Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita.
Part 1. The Oppenheimer Enator.
So let's unpack that quote, because a deeper translation reveals something much more profound. The original Sanskrit word used there is kala, and kala actually translates to time, not strictly death. By saying this, Oppenheimer wasn't actually hyping himself up as some arrogant divine destroyer of worlds. Biographers point out he was actually identifying with Arjuna, the reluctant human prince from the Gita. Think about it. Arjuna stood on the edge of a devastating war, totally paralyzed by the destruction he had to unleash. Oppenheimer felt that exact same moral anguish. He was performing this terrible duty solely because time and the unstoppable momentum of World War II demanded it. It was a reflection on the tragic inevitability of his actions, not a flex of his power.
Part 2. Ancient Nuclear War?
Now, this strange crossover between ancient scripture and modern science birthed a pretty persistent, highly debated theory. We have to look impartially at the evidence surrounding the ancient Indus Valley city of Mohenjo-daro. On one side, alternative historians like David Davenport claim to have found a 50-yard blast epicenter. We're talking fused bricks, vitrified glass, and skeletons seemingly frozen in sudden death, which they argue points to an ancient nuclear detonation. But on the flip side, the mainstream archaeological consensus, led by experts like George Dales, completely refutes this. They point out that those skeletons were found across rock layers spanning 1,000 years, not from one single bad afternoon. The fused bricks are easily explained by normal high-heat mud brick kilns, and the real nail in the coffin? There is an absolute zero trace of long-lasting nuclear isotopes, like trinitite. Those isotopes are the unavoidable chemical fingerprints of a real nuclear blast, and they just aren't there.
Still, the alternative theory hangs around, mostly because of the texts themselves. It is honestly uncanny how well the descriptions of mythological weapons map onto the horrifying realities of modern nuclear warfare. Take the Brahmastra from the Mahabharata. It's described as a giant fireball that scorches the earth and triggers a 12-year drought. Sound familiar? That is practically a textbook description of thermal radiation and nuclear winter. And then there's its big brother, the Brahmastra, which is said to poison food, cause mass infertility, and ruin the land for a staggering 155.5 trillion human years. It is absolutely mind-blowing that the ancient imagination perfectly captured the distinct horrors of radiation poisoning and genetic damage, millennia before the Manhattan Project was even a thought.
Part 3. The Great Filter.
If thousands of advanced civilizations should exist in our galaxy alone, where is everybody? That simple, terrifying question is the heart of the Fermi paradox. Mathematically speaking, the universe is so old and so vast that our galaxy should be absolutely buzzing with spacefaring life. Yet, when we point our massive telescopes up at the night sky, crickets, total silence.
And that brings us to the concept of the Great Filter. It's this theoretical evolutionary wall. The idea is that almost all life eventually hits this wall and destroys itself before it can manage to colonize the stars. This connects so perfectly to the ancient texts we just talked about. Think about the Hindu yugas, these massive cycles where human civilizations rise to incredible technological heights, only to inevitably crash and burn into ruin. What if that cyclical destruction is an ancient template for the Great Filter? It captures a deep-seated, universal anxiety about complete technological annihilation, an anxiety that, let's be honest, feels incredibly relevant to us right now.
Part 4. Echoes of transhumanism. Okay, let's pivot from total destruction to something a bit more optimistic. Today, the transhumanist movement is obsessed with radical life extension and morphological freedom, using the bleeding edge of AI and gene editing. But did you know that thousands of years ago, ancient Indian civilizations were already detailing protocols to conquer aging? Seriously,
The Charaka Samhita, an ancient Ayurvedic text, lays out the Amalaka Rasayana system. It was this intense physical and spiritual regimen specifically designed to push human lifespans to between 100 and 1,000 years. And it wasn't just about living longer. The Mahabharata talks about biological reanimation, like bringing King Jarasandha back to life by fusing two separate bodily halves together into a living whole. Even ancient Buddhist mantras were explicitly chanted to end aging and achieve infinite life. It turns out the drive to hack our biology and transcend our limits isn't just some modern Silicon Valley invention. It's a fundamental human obsession woven right into our ancient past.
Part 5. The Observer and the Cosmos.
Historically, a lot of external and colonial policies brushed these ancient texts off as just abstract philosophy or superstition. But Vedic science actually built an incredibly systematic, overarching framework. Take the Vaisheshika Darshana, for instance. What makes this ancient school of thought so game-changing is that it treats space, time, matter, and the conscious human observer as equal players. They are all interconnected stakeholders in the universe. Modern classical science usually tries to isolate the observer from the experiment to keep things objective, but Vedic science argued no, you literally cannot understand the universe without factoring in human consciousness itself. It was a radically subjective approach to an objective reality.
Which brings up a visual parallel that will completely blow your mind. When you look at ancient depictions of cosmic cycles, like the Konark wheel mapping the rhythmic flow of time, they look astonishingly similar to the chaotic but perfectly structured tracks of subatomic particles colliding in a modern cloud chamber. These Vedic frameworks suggest that space-time itself is emergent, born from and deeply linked to human consciousness. And the crazy part? That conceptually echoes some of our most cutting-edge modern physics, like loop quantum gravity, string theory, and even the Schumann resonance, which explores the electromagnetic rhythms shared by the Earth and our own biology.
So as we push the absolute limits of quantum physics, biological enhancement, and space exploration, we really have to ask ourselves, are we truly charting entirely new territory? Or is our most advanced futuristic science simply rediscovering profound, interconnected truths that our distant ancestors already figured out? It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces have been sitting there all along. It definitely makes you view the entire arc of human progress in a completely different light. Thank you so much for joining us on this wild journey through time, text, and tech. I hope this explainer gave you a fresh perspective on how beautifully complex our history and our future truly are. Like, share, and subscribe for more, and see you in another video with interesting story.